The two poems in this video were published by Teach Write, which is a literary journal for writing teachers. And they'll be publishing a third poem later this year. So, what is a literary journal? Is it the same thing as a small press publication? Well, no, not really. Literary journals are almost always associated with academia. In many cases, they are published by a university or college, and they will be funded by that institution. One of the things that they do is teach. And so when I was a student, I worked for a literary magazine that was published by the university. And I was a graduate student, so I was assigned it for a teaching assistantship. And I read poetry. Reading through the hundreds and hundreds of poems that were submitted is a long, drawn out process. And there were a number of students who were involved in the first part of that process. So the poems come in, they get logged in, then the students begin reading through them, and they say, yes, publish this. No, don't publish that. But that's not the end of the process, that's just the beginning. Because the editor made the final say. One of the things that stood out was that I was very highly selective when I was going through and deciding which poems should be published, which ones shouldn't be. And that was a stark contrast with another student who basically was saying yes to almost every poem. So between us, there was a big discrepancy. But if you looked at the other readers, it became far more balanced. But ultimately, it was the editor who made the choice. Now, Teach Write is not this kind of major academic enterprise. Instead, it's a one-woman show. So Katie Winkler is the editor. She reads all the poems, she decides what gets published, etc. So in that sense, this is kind of like a small press publication because they are typically a labor of love. In this case, as a literary journal, Katie is also making a contribution to academia. As an academic journal, this publication focuses on a particular aspect of academia, which is teaching writing to students. And it's reflective of the kind of experiences that teachers have when they do that. However, it's not just limited to that theme. It also accepts poems on other subjects. The two poems that I had published there both relate to teaching writing or teaching more generally. And here is the first one, 18 words. 18 words. Is your short-term memory long enough to read this poem? Or are you stuck on 18 words? That's what I've heard the upper limit should be for a sentence. Will the reader get lost if there are more words than that? But what of me, the writer? How limiting it is to cater to the least common denominator when there comes a thought far more brilliant and complicated than 18 words can articulate. What am I to do? Abandon it? Prune it down? Simplify it? Turn the deepest, most profound insight into the shallowest of all sound bites? Or write what feels right? 18 Words was inspired by a comment that a colleague made about 15 years ago. And she was a composition instructor, and she said that the average maximum length of a sentence that most people can comprehend is 18 words long. Now, at the time, I was teaching philosophy, and 18 words for a sentence is nothing in philosophy. I've read sentences in philosophy that would fill half a page or more in the book. And so, if you want to see what something like that looks like, take a look at, say, John Stuart Mill's On Liberty. And you'll find that he uses semicolons and conjunctions and so forth very liberally. And it's a very elegant style of writing. But it also requires that the reader can process that amount of information at one time. And apparently, a lot of people aren't able to do that. Okay. This last poem is most definitely autobiographical up to a point. The details aren't really accurate, but the sentiment is. And it was inspired by, well, the frustration, if you will, that can accompany grading student work. Finals week. A stack of papers I should grade consume the desktop and eat away the time. The one before me lies untouched, a camel straw that was too much to bear. How could the student cut and paste? I wonder as I contemplate the grade. I've taught them how to cite a source. I've taught them how to paraphrase. And yet, I shove the paper to the side and turn away to clear my mind. Again. I need to bolster my reserves before I give what it deserves. An F. I take the notebook from the shelf, flip through poems, compose myself until a recent one about AI draws me in and fills my eye. I nod. The felt-tip pen attacks the page with pent-up frustration, rage, and no! The anger slowly slips away. It's not their fault the times have changed, is it? I hope you liked this video, and if you did, press the button for it and consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your time.